Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's reading. I hope you've had a good day, as good as possible in light of all that is going on. We left off yesterday with Casey and John having a discussion about how people are likely to help when someone is working on their personal PFE. And the reason they're likely to help is because they sense the enthusiasm and passion of the person. And in addition to that, we learned that John is hoping to get a piece of strawberry rhubarb pie. So we're going to jump in with chapter 16. Before we do that, our cover for today is in the dialect of Marathi, which is a dialect in India. This is a cool little story behind this. I was approached to see if I would allow the book to be published, the cafe book to be published in Marathi, and 100% of the proceeds go to an orphanage in India. So that was a very cool idea somebody came to me with, and happy that we could accommodate that. All right, moving on, chapter 16. Here we go. A few minutes later, Mike arrived at the table. On the plate in his hand was a piece of pie large enough for 4 people. "One piece of strawberry rhubarb pie?" he asked. "Mike, that looks like half the pie. I'm not sure I can handle all that." He set an extra napkin and a new fork down on the table along with the plate. "Take your time. No hurry. How was your discussion with Casey?" By this time, I'd already taken a large forkful of pie and was in the process of chewing it. I chased it down with some water and swallowed. It was interesting. Very interesting. We were talking about people who seemed to have answered the modified version of this question, I said, and pointed to the menu. For a moment, the words on the menu transformed to, "Why am I here?" and then slowly returned to, "Why are you here?" I didn't even bother mentioning the change. "Right, that one," I continued. "Those people seem to have some common characteristics, and that they know why they're here. They've figured out what things they want to do to fulfill that reason, and they're completely confident they'll be able to do those things. And when they try to do them, events occur to help them succeed." Casey was explaining to me some of the theories people have on that last part. Mike grinned. "There's a lot of speculation about that one. There has been for a long time, possibly back to the oldest philosophers." "Mike, I'm a little confused about something. Why doesn't everyone go after their PFE? What is it that holds them back? And before you start, I know I should ask that question of myself, and I was doing so when you walked up, but I'm curious to know if there's a bigger, more encompassing reason than any I might have just for myself." Mike took a sip from the mug he was holding and set it down on the table as he sat down across from me. "Certainly each of us has our own reasons," he began. "And those reasons are something every person has to address themselves, since they're unique to their own situation. There are some bigger items that seem to dominate, though. For example, well, for many people, it's as simple as never having been exposed to the concept of a purpose for existing. Others understand the concept, but they aren't sure they have a PFE. Then there's some people who, because of their upbringing, environment, or perhaps religious beliefs, don't believe they have the right to try and fulfill their PFE. Even people who feel they have a purpose for existing and believe they have the right to fulfill it sometimes don't believe fulfilling it is as simple as knowing they can and then doing what they want. This goes back to some of what you and Anne were talking about. Many people make their living or get their power by convincing others that they or something they make or sell are the key to fulfillment. Imagine the challenge for them if people came to the realization that we each control our own level of fulfillment. The people trying to convince others would lose their power. For those types of people, losing power over others is not something that sounds appealing. That reminds me of one of the conversations Casey and I had earlier tonight, I said. She helped me understand that once someone knows their PFE, they get to do and become whatever they want. They don't need someone else's permission or consent. Correct. And on top of that, no one can keep a person from or enable them to achieve and do all they want in life. We each control our own destiny. I thought about that, and on my earlier conversations with Casey and Anne. What you're describing is very different from the messages I see and hear in my everyday life. I understand why it's so hard for people to even be exposed to the concept of identifying why they exist and of controlling their own destiny, let alone taking the next steps and actually living that way. Absolutely, said Mike, but it's not impossible. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, a visitor to the cafe told Casey and me an interesting story about how he learned about controlling his own destiny. If you're interested, I'll share it with you. Definitely. Does it involve more fishermen? Mike laughed. Not this time, but it does involve sports. For years, this guy had a recurring dream where he was standing over a very tough golf shot. As he explained it, he isn't a very good golfer when he's awake, so to face this challenge while sleeping was particularly frustrating. In his dream, the ball he needed to hit was sitting on a window ledge, or on a large, down-sloping rock, or someplace equally ridiculous and challenging. He would try and plant his feet, get a good practice swing, but it never felt right, and he knew the shot would be poor. The more practice swings he took, the more anxious and stressed he became. As his frustration peaked, he would finally feel like he was ready to take the shot. However, as he started his backswing, the location of the ball would change, and he'd be faced with a new, equally challenging lie. He would then go through another buildup of stress and anxiety. This cycle kept repeating until he'd finally wake up with his heart pounding and his body full of stress. One night he had the same dream, but at the point where he typically reached his maximum level of frustration, he was suddenly aware he could just pick up the ball and put it somewhere else. Nothing was at stake, and no one but he cared where he hit the ball from. He said he woke up with an incredibly strong sense of having gained a major insight into something that once he knew it seemed so obvious, but hadn't before. We ended our conversation with him explaining to me that despite what we may be taught to believe, or what we hear in advertising, or feel when we're stressed out at work, we each control every moment of our lives. I had forgotten that, and was trying to adjust to all kinds of other influences as I was letting them control my life. Just like no one really cared about where I hit the ball from, in life, only you truly know what you want from your existence. Don't ever let things or people drive you to the point where you feel you no longer have control over your own destiny. Be active in choosing your path, or it'll be chosen for you. Just move the golf ball. Mike finished the story and looked at me. See? No fishermen. No fishermen indeed, but a great story nonetheless. I like the message in there. So did the guy. He said the message in the dream changed his life. From that point on, he realized he was in charge of choosing his own destiny. Now, whenever he encounters something and isn't sure what to do, he just tells himself to move the golf ball. He said merely speaking the words reminds him to not be afraid and just do whatever he wants. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining today's reading. Be well, be safe, be healthy. I'll see you tomorrow.